All right, we're live. All right, so today we're gonna cover, let's start covering functions. And I appreciate Brooke setting everything up, having a good joke session. So if you're listening, the recording, try to make it for class, and you might get some good jokes before it. All right, so all right, so I'm gonna go straight to the code that was run last on the pages that we discussed for today, and it's here on the right, the vsearch.py script. And I'm gonna again, like usual, highlight the big important takeaways. Reasons for functions, and this wasn't clear in the reading portion of the class, right? The book. Keep in mind that functions are great for reusing code, right? One, and this we'll touch upon it on Thursday. If you have a piece of code that you see it has multiple uses, for example, in my own coding, I use code to locate files, and we'll do some of that in future classes. How do I locate particular files that I'm interested in? It's a function, right? It's something you do constantly, right? So instead of doing that code and writing it 20 times in 20 different scripts, just write it once as a function, and then all your scripts can use it. So we'll discuss that moving forward. Reusable code, make the code cleaner, easier to understand. To do that, you need to define that function and use this reserved word def. Again, like we mentioned in previous classes, def as a reserved word means that you cannot use it for anything else. You cannot say the variable name def, because it's not gonna work, right? It's a reserved word. It has a specific function, is to define a function. And then the function name, which is what you name that function. And between the parentheses, the arguments, which is this first variable here, the argument. This part is optional. It's a description of that argument. It tells you that the expectation is that the argument is a phrase. And then this other part here, not including the colon, it's a description of what the function will return, a set. Okay, and this, what's a set? We also discussed it in previous classes. Now, this is just a description. It doesn't really do anything. Like, it doesn't make the contents in phrase a string, right? It doesn't force it to, right? In the same way that this here doesn't force the output to be a set. It does not. It's just informational. Okay, so keep that in mind. Honestly, I don't use this. I should. It's like, it's more clear for the people that come later to code, but I usually don't. I usually just put my argument here, and that's it. Okay, and then we learned what triple double quotations, or triple quotes, single quotes, which is a block of text. It's ignored by the interpreter, so it won't show on screen. Okay, now this part we know. We have a variable. We created a set of the vowels, and then we make sure that we did an intersection with the argument that's being received with phrase, right? And then we did the same, another function, instead of one argument, with two arguments. And then we did an intersection between the phrase and the letters that are provided to do that intersection, right? So I'm gonna run this real quick. So let's, so when you run it, that means that functions are now loaded into the interpreter, and then you can use them. So how do we use them? So let's call search for vowels. And let's put the phrase, we're gonna look for pizza is amazing, because it is amazing. I wish it were free, but it isn't. All right, and we hit enter. And you see here that, see the argument? This is what I am feeding that function here, named here. So this pizza is amazing is placed inside this variable in the function called phrase. And then inside the function, it does the intersection, and then returns out the that intersection. In this case, is A and I, right? So these are the two vowels that I have. And this intersection, it will not give you repeated. It will be unique, right? There's A and there's I. And notice that in our set, there's no capital letters, so that's why it doesn't take this capital I here. Okay, let's do another one. Search for letters. If I wrote this correctly, right? Yeah. And then I'm gonna put here the phrase gonna be Python class is important, a really long phrase. Then I'm gonna put the other argument, and it's gonna be it could be any letters. Let's put the letters. I'm gonna put some random letters. Oh, but not like that, because I want to actually have some matches, right? Okay, that seems to be good. And we're gonna hit enter. So between Python class is important and this kind of randomish letters that I selected, these are the ones that are being intersected, O-T-A-I-S. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, this is a function. I was thinking of, for today's class, show you how to use that within as importing your functions in your script, but I'm not going to, because we're gonna discuss that on Thursday. I'm gonna do a quick recap, and what we're gonna discuss today is SQLite. I'm gonna introduce that artifact. And the reason I'm doing that is because the book is not really focused on forensics, but we're trying to use whatever we learn and then making it forensics, like DFIR for us, okay? So again, functions are really important. You will be using them a lot, and I will, starting next class, start giving you some exercises or homework so you can start using those functions, okay? Define it, and there's your arguments, done. Let's go with SQLite. So I posted on the DFIR channel for the class a SQLite database that I took out from the Kick application in Android that was kindly provided to us by Josh Hickman and his Forensic Images project, which is fantastic. If you don't know what that is, you can download Josh's images and do your testing and look for artifacts and practice. They're really good. So what you will see is something like this. Let me see if I make sure I have the right place. Things open. Just give me a sec. I'm gonna delete this and then recreate it. Okay, perfect. I'm set. All right, so I'm not gonna go into details about SQLite because that's not a SQLite class, but just take into account that you have your database and you might have some of that journaling files, like the WAL file or the journal files. I have a video on my YouTube channel that explains some considerations, so you can watch that. So the first thing you do is, okay, you have a database, Kick database, and before you start scripting, like I mentioned in the last class, you need to understand your artifact. So I'm gonna open it with SQLite DB browser. I think it's a pretty standard tool in this field that everybody likes, and I think it's really good. And for today's exercise, I'm gonna look at the Kick contacts table. So we go browse data and look at the Kick's contact table. Why am I doing this? I wanna understand out of this table what's important to me in my case. So then I can do a script to pull it out, automated for me. So I don't have to do this manually every single time. So for this example, I noticed that I do care about the JID, the display name. I care about the username. I care about the photo URL, and I care about the photo timestamp. Okay, I care about those things. And again, depending on your case, you might need to go around this whole thing, or maybe you want the chats. The chats should be around here somewhere. Let me see, where are they at? I'm getting older and not getting any younger. Let's remember messages. There we go. All right, so we got some messages here. So, and this will work on Thursday with the messages. All right, but for now we want the contacts table. So there's the data. I identified the fields that I want. All right, so we're good on that. Notice the following. If you can see here, you notice that we got your DB and your WAL files and everything. The moment I close, I'm done with it. Look what happens. You saw that? The WAL file disappeared, right? I'm telling you that because, and in my video on my YouTube channel, I go into more detail. You have to understand the artifact that you're working on when you're gonna script things out of it. If I were to only look at the database itself and not making sure that the WAL file is available, like in the same directory or in the same location as the database, I'll be losing data. The WAL file has a lot of data that needs to be committed or managed when you open your database. So just keep that in mind. Understand your artifact so you can script to it. And that's really important. And I made that mistake where I'm just looking at the database and not considering the WAL files. So make sure that when you do this, the WAL file is with your database and you don't keep them separate. Eric Zimmerman talks or mentions the same thing with registries in Windows. There are some log files that go with your registries in Windows. And if you look at those registries without those log files, you will be missing data. So just, again, your understanding of the artifact is really important. Now I'm gonna open, how much time do I have? Oh, plenty of time, plenty of time. We're good, we're good on time. So I'm gonna open a little script that I did for these purposes. And I wanna discuss them with you all so we can start working with SQLite database. The first thing you need to do is import SQLite 3. This comes with the Python standard library, so it's not something that special that you have to do. Just by putting import SQLite 3, it should be there for you, okay? What does this library do, right? You see here that we're calling it, and we're calling this method or this functionality called connect. This is necessary to, surprise, connect to the database, okay? If you notice here now, I'm trying to up our knowledge a little bit. So instead of just putting the database file name, as you see here, you see that, as we usually did when opening files. Now I also indicated a directory. So this database is inside this directory. And notice I'm referencing level back. And this is like regular Unix navigation through the file system. Why? Because my script, it's in a directory above, right? The script where the data, the directory where the data is, right? Hopefully that makes sense. I'm showing you this as a teaching point for this part is your connection, or when you're opening files, you can, put paths here. You will put paths here. And how this path works is in relation to the script that's opening that path, okay? If I take this out, it won't find it. It won't find the database, right? So you gotta make sure that you know how to navigate or locate a directory to locate those files. And that's not a Python thing. That's just a how do you navigate to a file system in Unix-like systems. If that makes sense so far, give me a 1. I said a lot of things like really, really fast. If not, stop me and okay, I see some 1s. Okay, awesome. Okay. Alrighty, so this is the connection, and we put that that connection into DB, right? In the variable DB. You can name this whatever you want. Now DB, right? Since we have this connection in here, we're gonna create a cursor, right? And a cursor is like a handler. The cursor will be able to manage any different instructions that you want to give the database to do for you. This is really similar to when let me show you that since we have some time. Like when we open files, let me see if we can open a file quickly here. Let me scoot this by. All right, there we go. Like when we open files in the other scripts, let's open the Discord one, for example. When we said open with open the file as file, this is a file handler. This file will deal with the data that you're opening, okay? A file handler. In this case, I see this DB, the cursor here. When you put DB cursor, it's like a handler for the connection, okay? So we take that, name it cursor, and then we say a cursor and the instruction we want to execute, or we want to commit, or we want to do fetch all. We can do many things with it, okay? Don't be discouraged. If this is your first time being introduced to these concepts, we will hammer them in the next classes. And I would suggest you go and Google, SQLite 3 in Python, and to get more of a background on this. All right, so we're gonna do the execute. This part here, it's pure SQL commands. And again, this is out of scope for the class, how to do SQL commands or instructions. But it's not that hard. It's just select the fields we identified in the previous step when we did the research on the table, right? We want these fields from this table that's contained in this database up here that we connected to, okay? There's ways of connecting more than one database, and there's ways of addressing more than one table. And hopefully we'll get to that as the class also progresses in the next couple of weeks or days. All right, here, notice I use a triple quotation here because I wanted to have my query not spanning just one big long line. I wanted to span multiple lines, right? And if you remember from the book tells you what that triple quotation or triple double quotes do for you, right? And your question is, well, why isn't this like a comment? Well, remember, we're doing this within the context of the execute command. So in this case, it allows me to have like a clear way of writing my query, like properly indented, and still be executed by the cursor. And by executing means that it will tell the database, hey, give me this information from this table, okay? Again, a little bit out of scope, but I wanna notice photo timestamp. If you look at the database as we did during the research section, let me open it real quick. Of course, if I open it, that would be good. There it is. You will notice that the photo timestamp here is a Unix epoch looking date, right? So I don't want to see this because my users or my stakeholders will not understand this is a date. So you can use a functionality in SQLite called datetime that will take your photo timestamp divided by 1000 because it's Unix epoch timestamp in milliseconds, 1000, and then tell, hey, it's a Unix epoch and give me the date, right? All right, and it will do those conversions. This one has a 0, that one has a 0, so the conversion there is gonna be crap because it's not gonna offset correctly. So what you need to do, and do it on your own time, make a case, a SQL case conditional here to kind of filter those out. And on Thursday, we can discuss that. All right. Now, so we execute the query, and so now what? Well, now from the cursor that executed that query, I want to fetch the results, if any, from this query, right? I'm gonna place those results in all rows, okay? The next thing I do, and this is kind of like an extra step, but I like to see, okay, how many rows do I have in my results? And I just kind of put them in this variable. And I check if those results are more than 0. Why do I do that? Because if I have no results, then I don't care to print them to the screen. I don't care to put them in a report because there's nothing to put on the report. What I received is nothing, right? So I like to do this check. And I really like it because it really brings together things that we learned previously, right? When do I use if and else? This is one great example of when you do that. Is there data? Is there data here? Yes. If there's data, in this case, I want to print it to the screen, iterate to the results. We learned how to do this in the last 3 classes, how to iterate to our results and how to print them out. If I don't have any results, then we're done. And last but not least, we want to close the cursor and close our database. And you might think, well, it's good to close things. You don't want to leave things open and eating up resources, or the possibility of the data being corrupted because we left it open, right? We want to close it. And you might ask yourself, well, we didn't close the files, right? Let me see. Like here, like we didn't open up this file, but we never closed it, right? And the reason for that is this particular way of opening files with open will handle the closing of the file for you automatically. Okay, I will teach you later a way of opening files that does not do that for you, and I'll show it to you just for the sake of showing it to you, because honestly, you should always open files with open. Okay, I don't know of anything similar to Open SQLite, so I always try to. I'm trying to make the habit of making sure I close my connections and close the database when I'm done using them. All right, enough about this long explanation. Let's run it. All right, so what do we have here? Let me scroll to the top. So I checked at line 20. Yeah, I have data, okay? And for each rows on my results, in all rows, remember, all rows is receiving all that data, all that fetch out, all that results from the query, all right? So I'm gonna iterate line by line, row by row, and printing that row. And if you see this row, it looks like a what? It could be a set, it could be a tuple, it could be like, it actually looks like a list, right? So let's quickly just do a couple of types here. I'm curious what type of data it is. So I'm gonna type row. So it's a tuple, right? We get tuples as for each row of our results, right? And as a tuple, And same thing at list, you can access them by index location. Let's do 0. And let's run it. You see that? Does that make sense? Actually, for it to make even more sense, let me do this. And I'm just kind of showing you some manipulations that you could do fairly quickly and easily with your results. So I'm gonna print the whole row, and then I'm gonna print just the first item in that, in that tuple. Okay. All right, so actually for it to look better, let me see here. Let me put this on the top. Just bear with me. Oops. This is fine. This should work. Of course, make sure it's properly indented. All right, let's do it again. All right, perfect. All right, so you see this here? So Joshua Hickman, the first item. I mean, this is all the items. This is the first row. But then I just picked one out. I didn't want to do this. There we go. I just picked row 0 or the position 0, and it gives me the first one, see? And this always gives me that extra one. So I'm showing you this because from your results, you might want to grab, individual parts of your results. And this is how you could do it. Just look at it, address it by location, and that should be fine. Furthermore, as we learned previously, Python will identify the type of the data you're pulling correctly by default. So let's confirm that. And notice that this here, it's a string, right? So Python will handle all the type functionality, the type of the data you're pulling out of your tuples on its own, which is fantastic, right? This is a string. I mean, all these are strings except this is a string because it doesn't have any, it has the single quotations, but if it's not a string, it will identify it and work with it, okay? What we're gonna do next class is we're gonna learn, and pretty much I'm done. We're gonna learn on next class how to take these functions and import them into our scripts. So we can start reusing code more easily. And then the homework, not for now, but for Thursday, it would be to open a database, the Kick database, look for the chats, and those chats make a report, a text file report, but the reporting has to be a function. You gotta use a function, and use a function that, this is the hard part for Thursday, so you can start thinking about it. I would like you to have a function that can print a report for the output of your SQLite parsing, and also for your JSON parsing. So I would like for us to develop a function that takes input, turns it into a file, like it could be tab delimited, just write it to a file. But that function should be used, or could be used, both by your parsing of your SQLite or your parsing of your JSON. If that makes sense, and I see a question I'll address in a second. If that makes sense, give me a 1. What the homework on Thursday will be, and on Thursday I'll recap it. Perfect. And you're gonna put it in probably Discord, right? Yes, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Okay, and cool. The files and everything. But I'll give you a heads up, since again I'm done, and I'll answer the question I think Jay made in a second. Because I want to focus in your mind in regards to why are functions important. Look, I can do a parser for Python. I can do a parser for SQLite. I mean, for Python, a parser for JSON, a parser for SQLite. But the reporting part, I can do a function, and it could, take any input, any argument, and give me my report. So you're reusing code, okay? All right. So let me answer the question, and then if people need to leave for I beg to differ, go ahead. If somebody wants to stay a few minutes, I can stay. Question: assuming you did not open in DB browser first, when you connect to a SQLite database within the script, does Python bring the WAL in? Yes. If the WAL file is in the same directory as your database, it will consider it. In my video, I go into more details, but this is really important. You gotta be careful with that, depending on what your purpose is. When you put the WAL file with the database and you open it with Python, it will do the commit, do everything, and update it. But what you will see is the database in its most recent state, okay? And if you're not familiar with how WAL files work, deletion of data, addition of data, movement of data within a database could be happening in the WAL file for a period of time and not be shown, or the proper word is committed, moved over to the main database, okay? And actually, I'm gonna put the screen here. Well, let me just finish here. And that's important because whenever you go and open your database and it brings the WAL file in, you're looking at the database as it looked last. If you want to see those deleted transactions that might be living in the WAL file, you need to analyze the WAL file, WAL, write ahead log, independently. And so you got to keep aware of that. And that's what I do. I have a little script in my own SQLite parsers that does a strings check on each WAL file and each journaling file for SQLite. And I do that because I want to see quickly do a triage of, okay, if there's anything in this WAL file that I might want to look deeper forensically before I commit it to the database, right? And so I do that check independently of me working with the database. And hopefully, Jay, if that makes sense, give me just tell me that it makes sense. Yeah, I think I saw you said cool. Okay, yeah, and that's why. But I have a video that goes into painstaking detail on that in my YouTube channel, so you can go check that out. All right, any other questions, comments?
No, Captain. Thanks so much for the class today.
Oh, dude, man, it's good to hear your voice. I saw you briefly when I logged in, so I'm glad you're sticking with us.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I was busy the last couple of weeks, but last couple of classes, but I'm back here.
Oh no, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, so let me stop the recording. Thank you, everybody.